Welcome to this episode of Dr. Kamini Rao's Masterclass.
Very important point that you brought was the doctor-patient relationship. I have one of my saddest moments as a doctor in the recent past is the demise of the patient-doctor relationship.
The doctors are now hounded, so they are no longer gods, but they are dogs. And dogs are meant to be beaten.
I too have seen this where doctors have the stethoscope around the neck and place it on whichever part hurts or whichever heart is a problem. You may be technically excellent but may have very poor interpersonal skills. I would certainly not go to a doctor who may be Michael DeBacchi. If he had no interpersonal skills, I would rather go to someone else I know and who can do a decent job. He doesn't have to be a brilliant surgeon. So I think that is what has to change. So I really don't believe that racism exists everywhere. I think if you do your work and they're happy with you, they treat you well. But don't come to India because I have a hospital in Bangalore. You come to India because you want to come back. There was a news item on NDTV that I was watching at night many years ago, and they showed a picture of a young kid being thrown out of the bridge. Then the story goes that this kid had kidney failure, was taken to a nephrologist in Mumbai or someplace from Uttar Pradesh. And then they said the kid has kidney failure, requires a transplant, told them the approximate cost of transplant. So the father said, okay, I'll bring the kid back after a week. And then he knew he couldn't afford it. It's pretty expensive, unfortunately. So he took the kid and threw the kid out of the bridge because he knew that he couldn't support the kid, unfortunate as it is. But the story doesn't end there. There were fishermen in the river who actually picked up the kid. So the kid didn't die. And then it became national news. So we sent a note to NDTV saying that we'll offer the transplant free of cost. Then the government of Uttar Pradesh said we will take the kid and give the treatment. So I believe the kid was given treatment by the government free of cost. So that was the state of children with kidney disease. Most of the parents would say, okay, doctor, we'll have another kid, because we can't afford to maintain this kid. That's a very common story. They would just go home, let the kid die. So we thought we must do something for pediatric nephrology. And this was another incident that happened during that time. So we said every month we'll do one pediatric transplant free of cost in Master Aitar's name.
Mm-hmm. So
which we continue to do.
So his legacy lives on.
Yes, yes.
So what happened to this woman then?
Very interesting, the lady conceived again and had another kid on the same day of birth of the kid that they lost. So that is, so it was a happy ending of sorts.
It's a happily ever after.
Yes.
So it's almost like once upon a time.
Yes,
and happily
yes.
ever
I mean, it's
after.
almost like a dream. I can't believe that these things happen in life.
You should write your biography and get this inside that, because this will change many young people's minds, into this kind of a thing. Very, very important. What about your nephrology kind of practice? Do you have any kind of interesting stories like this?
Many of them, but I'm more of a humanist, so I look at the human angle a lot more. And I vividly remember a scene a few years ago when this patient-doctor's relationship was at the worst. Every day there was a story of doctors being beaten up, hospitals vandalized.
Absolutely.
And one day I walk into the office and there's a big crowd of people outside my office. So I thought maybe they have come to beat me up for something that's gone wrong. So anyway, I went into the office, then I called them. They all came to the office. I have many pictures of gods in my office. So they all took the shoes out, came and sort of did their namaskar. And then they came for a totally different reason. I was totally mistaken. Then they brought in a lot of fruits, vegetables and other things that they had grown in their village. Apparently their grandmother from the village was admitted under me and she was extremely sick and everyone had said that she would die. But fortunately with good intensive care, nephrology, dialysis, so on and so forth, she walked home. And I knew she had walked home, but I didn't know the connection. So these people had come to thank me because we sent her grandmother alive and everyone said she would die. And so they were so grateful. So it was exactly the opposite of what I thought would happen to me.
So it's almost like a comedy, you wait for something. Yeah. But I hope more such things happen to doctors, but it's unfortunate that it doesn't happen. But what do you think that, the young doctors in casualty, particularly in private hospitals, and private corporate hospitals as well, get beaten up even without, a reason? the mob fury that takes place. How do you think we can stop this? I mean, is there anything we can do?
I'm not sure we can stop it, but we can take measures to reduce these kind of incidences. I've always said there are two sides of the coin, and I think first and foremost from our side, we have to be compassionate. We have to empathize with the people. You know, what happens is it becomes a little mechanical at times. You see so many people who are sick, dying, that you treat them like anyone else who has come in. I think if someone is sick and you sense that the family is very upset, spend a little more time with them, try to explain to them, tell them what is happening, so on and so forth. The second thing which really, in my opinion, has caused a lot of this damage is the cost of treatment. See, in the olden days, patients came to the hospital, they died, but they didn't spend any money. So people didn't really feel the pinch. Now they come to the hospital within minutes or hours, the bills run into lakhs and they lose that patient. So it's like going to a store, buying an expensive watch, and when you go home the watch is not working, or watch is dead, so to speak. So they will be upset and beat up the store. So they have taken the same psychology to medical care. They do not realize that medical care is very, very expensive now. In the olden days, if you had kidney failure and you're a poor man, you went to the general ward, died after a week with no bills. If you're a rich man, you went to the special ward, you could have your family stay with you, you still died after a week. So that was acceptable, but now there is treatment available, but unfortunately the treatment costs money. I mean, it is very expensive. Diagnostics and therapeutics are very expensive. And that is something that has not been conveyed very well, that medical care is expensive and you are going to spend money. And there's no guarantee in medicine that you spend the money and your patient will be fine. I think they always equate a poor outcome as negligence. And that has to change. Someone dying is not necessarily negligence. I think we have to differentiate between negligence and poor outcomes of a complication. Even the best of doctors may have complications. So that cannot be said that the doctor was careless and beat him up. So that has to be conveyed as a message through various organizations, doctors' bodies, and also to some extent the public sector, the government should educate the people, saying that not all poor outcomes are negligence. And we should look at making healthcare affordable to the common man.
But you've seen this, short film by Amir Khan, where he really curses doctors and says doctors are out to get money. And you've seen another film by Akshay Kumar, where this patient is already dead, and then the doctors are actually fleecing a dead patient also by asking for so many investigations, etc. Don't you think this gives a bad vibe in the market? And I think these sort of things should be banned.
No, I personally believe that that was in very poor taste, and it was a travesty of justice to so many young doctors who are giving up their lives. They work 24 hours a day, calls every third day, and about 12 years of training to become a specialist. It was a great injustice done to those doctors to paint everyone with the same brush. I'm sure there are people in every field who are not right, be it actors, actresses, or any field. So you cannot say the entire industry is so bad. I think in general the medical industry is still a very good industry, and the doctors are probably still one of the most honest people on this earth compared to the many other fields. So just because there are one or two dishonest doctors, you can't go on a movie and say that he's selling the organs or he's keeping the body, not releasing the body because they want money. So I personally felt that both Mr. Amir Khan's program, Satyameva Jayate, or whatever that was called, and also that movie that you alluded to, caused a lot of harm to the medical profession.
But there was not that much of agitation from the medical profession, and I find, in the medical profession, we're very late to get up and actually protest. Why is it?
See, I think by nature, I think doctors go through a lot of hard work and are tired by the time they come out. They don't have the energy to protest. And secondly, I think our numbers are small. So it's not like large, and we are not unionized, which is the right thing. So we do not have that solidarity, large numbers. See, I think anything that needs to make an impact, there has to be some vote bank behind it. And we are not a big number, and also we are not unionized. We will not go and vote en masse against one person or one party or the other. So people do not take us seriously. So we are sort of very soft targets, so to speak.
Or a couch potato.
Yes.
Well, I feel, it is so sad that people, just because it is X and Y actually representing, the public and self-representing public and saying that we are bad, we don't have similar kind of icons, perhaps icons like you, who could stand there and say similar things of the public and say that you people did wrong, and have some short films to say how public are in the wrong, and that should be put in public interest, that this is where you're wrong and doctors are right. So that that gives a fitting reply to these kind of films. So they understand that, look, you can't take us for granted.
No, I think it's very important that we put the points of view of the medical fraternity across, and obviously this will be best done by people who are recognized in the field. But unfortunately, I think people who are recognized in the field have not come out very vocally, forcefully to defend the doctors for various reasons. I think many people do not want to go against the establishment or whatever. And also probably many people sort of think that life goes on. So I think we have to certainly be more proactive. I'm not saying just condemn or say that what you're doing is wrong. I think we need to create awareness. And the only time I thought that the doctors came together was during the KPME issues, where the entire fraternity from top to bottom stood up, and things did change.
Yes.
So if things like that do happen more often, I think the doctors will be taken more seriously.
The other thing that I actually look at is how do we get patients to realize. One is, of course, getting counseling into it, making sure that consenting and getting the consents properly, sort of done. Because you have these consent forms which are so woefully inadequate. Yes. Anyone can operate, anyone can this thing. If you die, nobody is responsible. Now, will that kind of a consent form really stand in the court of law?
Probably not.
Definitely not. Yeah. But that is the kind of form these people are supposed to be signing as they get in. And that's the only consent form that you see in that file.
No, I think we have to improve what we are doing, improve on many things that we are doing. I think an informed patient is your best bet. They are least likely to go against you because they have been told in the language they understand, in the mannerisms that they understand. See, right now it's almost like a blank paper. There is so much of small print, and sometimes the patient will put the thumbprint, sign, and someone will be a witness, someone will be the doctor, and they may not be related to each other. What we have done, Kamini, at least in the transplant scenario, which became a necessity because of all the so-called scandals, is we long back, many years ago, maybe at least now 10 years, we have video consenting now, in the language that the patient speaks. We have the surgeon, the nephrologist, patient's relative, and the witness, and it is video recorded. The consent is video recorded. In our case, of course, we have to also give it to the government because of transplant regulations. So I think we should improvise where the patient cannot say that I never knew they were going to operate on me. They operated on me for an appendix and took my kidney out or something like that.
And so, absurd things like this.
Yeah.
Yes. That's true. Because what is happening today is all this is coming up only because of mistrust, because they are not actually listening, and also it could be extortion. There is another situation that comes up, and it's very similar even with IVF. They would say that, oh, they robbed my baby away, or they robbed my egg away, or some nonsense like this. And however much you do, ultimately they can always disprove you, and the final trust is within you and them. Because I've seen whatever we do, there is a limit to which you can go, and the rest, of course, is what the judge will take, whatever kind of decision the judge will take. So I think what we need to do today is to improve the doctor-patient relationship to the good old days, and that can happen only because in corporate hospitals there is so much of emphasis on profit, that they don't mind poaching any number of doctors from anywhere and put them into their place and give big advertisements and see that these doctors are really made, to stand in front and work for them. And what happens in the end is that if they don't work, then they're removed and then another set of doctors are taken in. So if this happens, where does the doctor go? He becomes a pawn in the entire game. What is your thoughts on this?
See, I think there is good and bad in the corporate culture. The good is, I think, that modern medicine has come to India because of corporates. In the good old days, I remember when I was a student, if you had anything more than a cold and cough, you had to go to Vellore, Chennai or somewhere else. If it's any heart surgery, brain surgery, kidney issues, anything like that. IVF was unknown those days, so only we knew it in the cows, but not in human beings. So that was the state. And I think corporate culture now, the best of centers in every field is available here in Karnataka, in Bangalore. We don't have to go anywhere. In fact, people have started coming from elsewhere. So I think that is the power of corporatization. Of course, with this comes the expenses. It becomes expensive. Anything that is corporatized and has modern facilities, it is expensive. And it becomes worse when you have to pay from your pocket. I think that is the worst thing that has happened to India. In the olden days, people didn't have therapy, so they died at home or in a hospital in a nice bed. No one cared. They were not upset. Now they know that they can get treated in a private hospital. They do probably realize it's going to be expensive, may not know how expensive it is. And they have seen their well-to-do friends get treated and go home. So it's very sad if you're poor or underprivileged, you have a kidney problem, your friend who's well-to-do next door can get a kidney transplant, whereas you cannot get a kidney transplant. So they go beyond their means, get into the private sector, and the bills come. If the outcome is good, they probably still pay the bills and be happy. But if the outcome is poor, I really feel sad for them. They've spent their entire life savings. I personally have seen women bring in their husbands. I mean, I say bringing their husbands because women are more generous in general. We see that most transplants that we do are women giving kidneys to men. So when they come there, well-dressed, earrings, Mangal Sutra, gold chain, and as time progresses, they come in shabby clothes, no jewelry, and they've sold everything, including their house, because private care is expensive, and unfortunately, they don't have any insurance or money. So I strongly believe universal health coverage is the only way of getting this out. In the US Medicare or in the UK NHS, people don't pay from their pocket unless they willingly want to see a consultant in the private sector. Here, we are forced to go to an expensive hospital, even though you don't have the resources. And I think that has changed a lot of the patient's attitude towards doctors. Of course, the doctors also, I'm sure there are a few doctors and institutions which do things that they shouldn't be doing. And there is an element of extortion.
Absolutely. But to what extent does media play a role in this? Now, suppose we didn't have as many television channels as we have today. Do you think there would be this much of litigations?
I think the media could play a positive role, but they have to, they do what they do best. They have to send out the news. But what media has created is created a lot of awareness, and sometimes awareness in the wrong direction can cause a lot of harm. And we see this in all fields, not just the medical field. I think we see this in every field. So I think a good doctor-patient relationship, counseling, affordable medicine, and a positive attitude of the media, and laws coming down heavily on extortionists is probably the only way out.
Yeah, but even if you have laws, we already have some laws against mobs coming and ransacking the place, and that they have got to make good all that. But we've not had any of these people convicted.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
True. I think the laws are there, but it's not implemented.
Well.
And there is outright extortion. In some cases, we had a very interesting comical kind of scene. There was some patient who was not doing well, and there was hundreds of people gathered outside the hospital wanting to beat up the doctor. They wanted the doctor to come out. So then I was called. I came there. By the time I came in, there were no one in the crowd. Then I asked one of the persons who was leaving, "Why are you leaving?" They said, "We are paid by the hour, so our time is up."
Oh.
We had obviously arranged for the police and other things. But what I'm saying is that was a blatant case where there were hired gundas brought into the hospital for extortion. And they were only paid by the hour, I believe. The time was up, so they left. So there was no one when I went to the hospital. No crowds.
So I think, in all this, I think the doctor is the one who gets victimized. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So therefore, if you tell all the doctors today or the youth today, who wants to be a doctor, how many people will put up their hand?
I can say for sure in the olden days when I used to give a lot of these career-oriented talks, almost 100% of the youngsters would say I want to be a doctor. Now I have to drag a few hands up because no one wants to be a doctor, no one wants to go through this rigorous training, then be beaten up, and also I think it's not as lucrative as many of the other professions. But I still believe we need good doctors, we should convince youngsters to become doctors.
To what extent do you think government has failed as far as the healthcare is concerned? And what could the government do more to make it more attractive?
I think the primary focus of the government should obviously be primary and preventive kind of initiatives that they should take, because we should try to keep people out of hospitals. Being in a hospital is very expensive. So if we can prevent or control the disease better through primary preventive care and public health, I think the cost of healthcare will dramatically come down, and that's where the government has a major role to play. The second part is, I think the government should be able to offer primary, secondary health care on their own, and they should have a public-private partnership for tertiary care. And because the problem is that no one can afford to pay for care in a private sector hospital unless you're fabulously wealthy. So that sort of makes them feel that doctors are demons and private sector is sort of the culprit. They are taking away our money. So if there is some kind of a universal health coverage, Honorable Prime Minister Modi has started the Ayushman Bharat, some extension of the Ayushman Bharat, and if it is mandatory for you to have a driving license to drive, why not it may be mandatory to have a health insurance card for every citizen? Let them pay a small copay. I mean, people can pay a small copay, and if we insure a large number of people, then the cost of care would come down, because not everyone gets ill. We have a large, young, healthy population. So I think we should look at universal health coverage. No one should walk around in India without a health insurance.
And also, a donation card for your organ donation.
Yes, absolutely. That's very close to my heart.
That's why I wanted to say that,
Thank
you must have a donation card, because, your blood group and your donation card, so in case you have caught up with an accident or something like that, even before the parents or the relatives arrive, at least if you've got that card, you can save a lot more people, even in your death.
No, very true, very true. We have an acute shortage of organ. Now, in Bangalore and Karnataka, people wait for years together to get a cadaver kidney. And that also gives rise to all this unethical, unrelated transplants where you buy and sell organs. And if organs were available freely, why would anyone get into all that? So I always tell my patients, if any one of your relatives wants to donate, not only they should sign the card, but they should inform their family, this is my wish. Because what happens is when they are very sick, we don't know what their wishes are. And even if they have a card and they have not told the family, many in the family during that grief and crisis may not agree to have the donation done.
That's also very bad. That's true. I think, we've really talked a lot about healthcare, and I'm hoping that my viewers will at least understand that doctors are also human beings and doctors also have families. So therefore, again, getting back to your family, how much of time do you spend with your family?
See, I must admit I am not a workaholic who never sees my family and would not recognize my wife if I see her in a mall. So I do spend time with the family. Of course, now we have a large team, so I have a little more free time. But during the younger days, yes, it was work. But I did try to make time, and my wife has been very supportive. So at least Sunday afternoons was for the family. We used to go for a movie or whatever. And then one vacation in a year, certainly with the entire family. Children, now grandchildren, their husbands, so on and so forth. And so one vacation together, usually out of the country, and then the weekend with the family, by and large, if it's possible.
Well, that's good enough. I think, at least something there, because at least you connect with your roots and also to de-stress. What about your golf and your driving around and your coffee plantations and all that?
My sort of joy in life used to be playing golf. I learnt golf, or learnt a little bit about golf when I was in the US. Then fortunately we have a golf club right next to the hospital.
Ah, yes,
So you
the
can,
Karnataka golf course. Yeah.
jump out of the compound and be in the golf course. So many of us doctors actually had, for some reason, Wednesday afternoon was for golf. Fair number of our doctors. Then unfortunately I got hit with chikungunya many years ago. Then I was out of action, and after that I got too busy. So golf has taken a back seat now. But what I really enjoy is going out in the wilderness with my wife. We usually go to our coffee plantation once or twice a month. It's in the wilderness, and I like off-roading in my four-wheel drive.
Oh, okay.
And you don't see people, don't see traffic.
I know. The only thing you see is wild animals.
Yeah, that is actually, believe it or not, it is quite scary. We have a herd of bisons in our estate, and a lot of deer, occasional elephants, and believe it or not, there's a crocodile in our pond.
How did that?
I don't know. We don't have any water bodies except ponds that are seen, lakes and ponds. So we saw a crocodile. I had pictures of that, and then I was worried because there are a lot of kids running around, laborers and all that. So then we got the forest department, and great efforts tried to get it out, but it moved out on its own without harming anyone.
Okay.
So, but I believe they do see crocodiles who walk from, they walk from a stream or a lake into another lake. But that was scary for me because I had never seen a crocodile in an estate.
But I heard that your father was a hunter as well.
Yes,
so maybe.
my father was a very interesting man. Of course, he was a businessman and also had a lot of lands those days before the land reform. But he was into sports and hunting.
Wow.
And those days, of course, hunting was not illegal. So he used to hunt wild boar, rabbits, deer, occasional bison. And then Manipal those days was a dense forest, and one of the man-eater tigers had gotten into a school, and he was the well-known hunter in and around there. So he was called, and unfortunately he had to shoot that beautiful animal because it had become a man-eater. And there was a procession on the bus with the tiger and him around the city. So I used to tell him in the later years that I'm glad it happened in those days. If it happened now, you would be behind bars.
Absolutely, with all this kind of acts that have come out with the wildlife, it's very difficult. But these were the things that we enjoyed during our age and our time. So the good old days. So even say, for example, the kind of distractions you had, for example, maybe just that radio, that Philips radio, or that Murphy radios, or maybe Radio Ceylon and Amir Sahni, giving you
absolutely.
that music. Other than that,
Binaka Geet Mala.
That's the only thing that you would have. But having had all that, I think we had our fun times, and we had enough times to talk and sort of get to meet people, rather than two of us sitting down. If we didn't do masterclass and we both had our mobiles on and look at our WhatsApp, I mean, that wouldn't be a masterclass at all. But that's the way the whole new generation is actually going forward to. So having said this, I felt that there's so much of messages that you have given to our young doctors today. I feel that if they even were to take a tenth of what you said, it will make a lot of difference to their lives. Because today what I feel with the young generation is that they are always in a hurry. If I move 10 steps, what am I going to get out of it? If I move 5 steps this way, what will I get out of it? If I'm going to go in that direction, how long will I get to get 2 certificates? This is what I'm seeing all the time. People are always looking at how much salary will they get. And if they do a night duty, what's the extra pay I'm going to get? I'm sure you would have never thought of a salary when you worked or I worked. I always looked at what is the kind of knowledge I'm going to gain, what is the experience I'm going to get in these days. Because when you say 1 in 2 duties, I would jump at it, because how many of them would have done a breech delivery, for example? But unless you do so many duties, you will never be able to see that. So today the kind of youth that I see are very kind of working like software engineers. For 2 hours, this is the kind of value. 3-hour work or 4 hours. Where do doctors actually work by the hour?
Never.
No,
you raised some very important points. I do respect the younger generation for what they have achieved. However, the one is, I think they're less social than what we used to. If I see you somewhere, I'll come to you, speak to you. Now they'll just say hi and just move on. And even if they're sitting across the table, they'll use their WhatsApp to talk to each other rather than
Say hi to you.
And any guests coming home, they will always be glued to the TV. I'll say hello to auntie. Oh, okay, hello auntie, how are you? That kind of a thing. That, of course, that's a new generation, and also the way the life is. But I do agree with you that these kind of things of instant gratification, I do work for an hour, I must get something in return. That is something that bothers me. One of my colleagues was telling me that apparently he was on rounds and he had some fellows with him, and suddenly one fellow disappeared during rounds. So he thought maybe an emergency of some sort. Then apparently he called him later, and what they found is, he said, I finished my hours for the week.
Oh.
Fortunately, it's a rarity in the medical profession even today. I'm fortunate that all our fellows will stay as long as we want them to stay, have never complained about an extra duty. But I was quite shocked because that's never happened in the medical community, where you walk out because your time is up. So I was worried if that happens in the medical field, then we are out in the cold. Yeah.
God help the patient. But I think this is what we are actually going to brace ourselves for. And unless we stop this culture, I think we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I think we've had a exhaustive conversation on this particular thing, and I have really been very, very satisfied having talked to you, Dr. Ballal, and I'm sure our viewers have enjoyed it, because looking into the life of a doctor, you please understand that doctors are also human beings. Doctors can treat, but doctors don't cure. The God above will cure. So when you come to a doctor, do not come with the idea that just because you come and see a doctor, that everything that you have will all go away. The doctors at best can diagnose and tell you that this is a possibility and we may be able to treat you. So please understand that what you've received today, there is a lot of mistrust both from the patient side and the doctor side. Let us together build this trust more and more, so that we get back to the good old days where the doctor is looked upon as a person who can heal and who is meaning good for all of you. So, Dr. Sudarshan Ballal, what is your message to the youth and to the public today with what we have spoken?
At the outset, thank you very much. It was really wonderful interacting with you for an hour or more now. And the lot of messages that we have brought in our conversation. But my parting message would be that we have to be a compassionate nation. And if you want to be a doctor, do not think of the returns in a monetary way. You have to be a doctor because you want to serve people. You want to make sure that people are not in pain. And money will come. If you are a good doctor, people will follow you. But don't take your remuneration as something that you look at when you get into the profession. You get into the profession because you are passionate about the profession, you want to do good to the society, everything else will follow. Be honest, sincere, ethical in your practice, and people will love you for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ballal. So now we have heard Dr. Sudarshan Ballal, and I'm sure all of you agree that he is not only an excellent doctor, a motivator, a trainer, an administrator, a nephrologist, and above all, a very good human being. Thank you for watching this show, and I'm sure you will be watching these shows in future as well. Thank you very much. Keep watching Dr. Kamini Rao's Masterclass. See you soon.
Dr. Ravi Prakash, medical practitioner, businessman, and an avid vintage and classica collector, heading the national federation in this country and being part of the World Body Fever. I'm here today with an old dear friend, Kamini Rao, who is an expert in infertility, and she is called for her show of Masterclass, and which is going to be, probably exposing all of us of what we are made of and what we can, deliver to the rest of the people, like how she has delivered so many babies. We need to deliver what we have achieved and what it can help all the other friends who want to be achievers in life. And I wish the very best to Kamini for her shows and to the people who follow her on her channels. Thank you.